The Peloponnesian War was a brutal struggle that spanned nearly 3 decades, pitting Athens and its empire against Sparta and its allies. It was a clash not only of city-states but of two vastly different ideologies and ways of life. Athens, with its formidable navy, democracy, and culture of intellectualism, stood in stark contrast to the military discipline and oligarchic society of Sparta. This epic struggle saw some of the most innovative and ruthless strategies in ancient warfare, with both sides adapting to challenges on land and sea as they fought for dominance. Chapter 1: The Seeds of Conflict. The story begins with the formation of the Delian League, an alliance initially formed to resist the Persian threat. Athens emerged as the leader of this alliance, its fleet growing in power and influence. However, the city's ambition and heavy-handed treatment of its allies sowed seeds of resentment. Sparta, the head of the Peloponnesian League and longtime rival of Athens, watched with growing concern as Athens expanded its influence. This chapter introduces key players like Pericles of Athens and the Spartan king Archidamus, setting the stage for their eventual clash. Chapter 2: The First Moves on Land. The Spartans, masters of land warfare, initially aimed to invade Athenian territory and weaken the city by disrupting its food supply. This chapter describes their strategy, detailing the devastation they inflicted on the Athenian countryside. But Athens, under Pericles, devised a strategy of endurance, relying on its navy to bring in food and resources while sheltering its citizens within the walls of the city. The tension rises as both sides face the brutal reality of prolonged war. Chapter 3: Naval Supremacy and the Athenian Strategy. The Athenians took to the seas, raiding the Peloponnesian coastline and securing vital trade routes. This chapter explores the unique challenges of naval warfare in the ancient world, the tactics employed by Athenian admirals, and how their dominance at sea gave them an edge. Through naval engagements and daring maneuvers, Athens kept Sparta at bay. Chapter 4: Siege Warfare and the Struggle for Fortresses. As the war continued, sieges became a key strategy. Sparta and Athens both targeted strategic cities and fortresses. This chapter delves into the brutal nature of sieges, with soldiers and civilians enduring starvation, disease, and constant assaults. It shows how these strategies wore down both sides, escalating the stakes and intensifying the conflict. Chapter 5: The Shift of Fortune. With the war dragging on, alliances began to shift. Persia, eager to weaken both Athens and Sparta, entered the fray, tipping the balance in favor of one side, then the other. This chapter focuses on the impact of foreign involvement, showing how the war became a more complex and far-reaching struggle. Tensions rise, and a sense of impending disaster looms. Chapter 6: The Fall of Athens. After years of struggle, the Athenians faced defeat. The final chapter chronicles the dramatic fall of Athens, capturing the despair and loss of a city that once prided itself on democracy and cultural superiority. We see the characters come to terms with the cost of their decisions and the toll of the war on their people. Chapter 1: The Seeds of Conflict. The golden sun dipped low over the Aegean Sea, casting long shadows over the grand city of Athens. The city thrummed with life as merchants, artisans, and scholars filled the bustling agora, trading stories and ideas. But beneath the surface of Athens' brilliance lay the growing shadow of conflict, one that would soon engulf not only Athens but all of Greece. Decades earlier, a great alliance had formed to resist the powerful Persian Empire. Known as the Delian League, this coalition of city-states was led by Athens, which had distinguished itself as the naval power capable of standing against Persia. At first, the League was a mutual defense pact, a partnership bound by a common enemy. But over time, Athens' influence grew. Its fleet became the largest and most advanced in Greece, its navy dominating the Aegean Sea and securing vital trade routes that filled the city's coffers. Under the guidance of Pericles, the charismatic leader and statesman, Athens expanded not just its military but its cultural and intellectual influence. Temples and theaters were built, philosophers like Socrates roamed the streets, and artists crafted sculptures that would be admired for centuries. Pericles envisioned an Athens that was not just a city but an empire, a center of learning, art, and democracy. However, as the Athenians' pride and confidence grew, so too did the resentment among its allies, who felt more like subjects than partners. Across the Peloponnesian Peninsula, Sparta observed these changes with mounting suspicion. Unlike Athens, Sparta valued simplicity, discipline, and military strength over intellectual pursuits. Their society revolved around the art of war, with every male citizen trained as a warrior from a young age. They despised the lavish lifestyles of the Athenians, seeing them as a weakness that would one day lead to their downfall. Tensions rose as Athens continued to demand tributes from its allies, enforcing its will through its powerful navy. Some city-states tried to break away from the Delian League, only to be met with swift and brutal retaliation. When the island of Naxos attempted to secede, Athens laid siege to it, forcing the people back under Athenian control. For many in Greece, this was no longer an alliance of equals but an empire ruled by Athens. To the Spartans, the Athenians had overstepped. The city of Corinth, a powerful ally of Sparta with a strong navy of its own, grew increasingly concerned as Athenian influence crept closer to its borders. The Corinthians, masters of trade and navigation, had long seen Athens as a rival. They feared that if Athens continued its expansion, Corinthian independence would be next to disappear. Corinthian envoys traveled to Sparta, urging them to act before it was too late. In the grand hall of Sparta's council, the Corinthian delegates painted a grim picture of Athens' ambitions. They warned that if Sparta didn't curb Athens' power, all of Greece would eventually fall under Athenian rule. The Spartan king Archidamus listened in silence, his sharp eyes betraying none of the thoughts churning in his mind. He was no fool. He understood the gravity of the situation. Yet he was also wise enough to know that war with Athens would not be easily won. Athens held the seas, and their walls were impregnable, capable of withstanding a siege indefinitely as long as supplies could be brought in by sea. But Archidamus knew that Sparta's reputation was at stake. If they did not stand against Athens, they would appear weak. The pressure from Corinth and the growing dissent among other city-states demanded action. Sparta had no choice but to prepare for war, though Archidamus feared what lay ahead. The decision was made, and envoys were sent to Athens, demanding that they disband the Delian League and return control to each member state. Pericles received them with a mixture of amusement and disdain, refusing their demands. Athens will not bow to threats, he declared, sending the envoys back empty-handed. To him, the Delian League was not merely an alliance but an achievement, a testament to Athens' leadership and protection of Greek freedom. Yet, as Pericles and his council discussed their next steps, he felt the weight of what was to come. He knew that defying Sparta and its allies would lead to bloodshed on a scale Greece had never seen. He understood the cost but believed Athens was destined for greatness. As he watched the envoys depart, he whispered to himself, "Let them come." In the quiet moments after, as the people of Athens went about their lives, unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon, a sense of unease lingered in the air. War was coming. The seeds of conflict had taken root, and soon, all of Greece would feel its wrath. The war began slowly, like the first few drops of rain before a thunderstorm. Tensions had built up for years, but it was in the spring of 431 BCE that Sparta finally made its move. Under the leadership of King Archidamus, the Spartan army began its march northward toward the lands of Athens. The Spartans moved with the precision and discipline that had earned them the reputation of the finest warriors in Greece. Every step they took was a warning to the Athenians. Sparta was ready for war. For the people of Athens, the news of the Spartan advance was met with fear and anxiety. Farmers from the Attic countryside abandoned their fields, flocking to the safety of the city walls. Pericles, however, remained calm. He had long prepared for this moment, believing that Athens could withstand any siege so long as it controlled the sea. As the Spartan forces approached, Pericles addressed the Athenian assembly. His voice was steady and filled with conviction as he outlined his strategy. "We will not engage them on land," he declared. "Our strength lies in the sea, and it is there we will wage this war." He explained that by bringing the population within the city walls and relying on their fleet for supplies, they could outlast any Spartan siege. Athens, he argued, could rebuild its fields and farmlands, but not the lives of its citizens. Despite his confident tone, Pericles knew the strategy would test the resilience of his people. The Spartan army began its assault on the Athenian countryside, burning fields, uprooting olive groves, and laying waste to villages. Plumes of smoke rose in the distance, visible from the city walls. The sight filled the Athenians with anger and a desire for revenge, but Pericles urged restraint. "Let them destroy what they will," he insisted. "We shall rebuild it all once the war is over." Weeks turned into months as the Spartans continued their campaign of destruction. The Athenians watched helplessly as their lands were ravaged, forced to trust in Pericles' strategy. Inside the city, food and supplies flowed in from the sea, brought by the Athenian navy, which continued to patrol and protect the Aegean. However, the crowded conditions inside the walls began to take